You guys, Survivor always has a way of keeping me on the edge of my seat, so let's get into episode 9 of season 48 because this episode epitomized that.
It's like, yeah.
Okay, so a little kind of complaint, if you will, from us because that's what we love to do. No, I'm just kidding. But a complaint for sure. So this episode was so heavy on camp life.
It was too heavy on camp life.
And here's what I go really back and forth because I think the beauty of these 90-minute episodes that they started a few seasons back is that you do get a better sense of who these people are and the game that they're playing. Because I think some of the argument was kind of, and when the new era kicked off, so season, let's say 41 to 43, just throwing out random numbers here. I think a lot of the complaints where we got to the finale and it felt like we didn't really know the contestants, we didn't really know the winner. So it was like really hard to really understand if we felt like someone deserved it or not as a fan. So now I feel like we get a lot more insight into the gameplay and who these people are. But what I think is hard too is I'm like, let's do less like immunity challenge camp life and let's focus more on like that in between immunity and tribal council so I can see more of the juice of what people are thinking.
Right, because I mean, that's where more of the drama comes from usually anyways. I mean, I looked halfway through the episode and I was like half an hour into camp life and I'm like, what's going on? Well,
I will say the one interesting piece of this, it went on a little too long, but the biggest kind of takeaway from all of this was basically, this initial camp life, kind of the next morning, really was a fallout of the tribal council from the night before because this is where Chrissy went out, but it was kind of this ongoing drama, you know, on that pre-tribal council where it was like, do we get Chrissy out? Do we take out Camilla? But Kyle was like trying to defend Camilla, and then Joe didn't really want to get out Camilla. So it kind of became this whole thing. So then David now on this, you know, in the present day camp life is accusing Joe of basically betraying him or lying to him, however you want to view that. And one thing you should know about Mr. Joe is don't ever say that to his face.
Oh, no.
Because he is so big on loyalty and their whole thing has been honesty and integrity and playing this very trustworthy game. And so I'm like, for your biggest ally to come to you face to face and say, you lied to me is wild.
But here's also the thing too you have to remember. I mean, I think we've touched on this before. You're in Survivor, which is a game of deception and lies in all honesty. And yes, somebody might be truthful, but you might not know that because if you watch Survivor for the 40-some seasons, people lie. You don't know out there. You're also starved. You're probably mentally drained, so you're not fully functioning on your thoughts. And I mean, it got to David's paranoia for sure.
I just like really, I feel like we touched on this a little bit in the last review, so I won't say too much, but I do become increasingly frustrated by this whole like, we're trying to play this honest integrity, this integral, whatever game, because I'm like, that's just not the essence of Survivor. Like, at the end of the day, I realize that may not be your own character, but we have seen really, seemingly really good people at home tap into these other sides of them. Because at the end of the day, you're playing $1 million and only one of you can win. And I'm like, so who cares about this honest game? It's just like, I get so frustrated. But what I did enjoy seeing was, you kind of see this buildup of Kyle and Shaheen kind of being like, I don't really know if David is for us. Because they kind of were all in an alliance together up to this point, right? And Shaheen and Kyle, you see them kind of just continually be like, maybe this is a time where we start to kind of plant seeds with Joe and Eva, because obviously they're a duo that's never going to be split up or go against each other at this point anyway. They're like, maybe we should start planting those seeds because they're getting really frustrated by David. And then kind of, you know, Mary is kind of like David's little sidekick, kind of little shadow. So anything David does, Mary's there. And that, I think, is getting a lot of people's nerves. But I will say, one more thing about this whole camp life thing, a heartwarming moment that I really did enjoy seeing. A breakout star for me this season, no pun intended, is Star. Star, I love her. And we have this beautiful kind of humanistic moment, like we always, always touch on these, where she was like, man, I would love to just swim out there freely in the open water like everyone else does, but I don't really know how to swim. Well, Mitch takes it upon himself to kind of be like, okay, girl, I got you. I'm gonna teach you, and kind of shows her the ropes. And then you see her kind of do her thing. And I'm like, that's incredible, because think about it. It's like a moment like that where you're like, had Star not gone on Survivor, perhaps she never would have learned to swim.
I will say, I was a little surprised that she hadn't started learning before she went on Survivor. I was also convinced that that was setting us up for a water challenge in this episode.
Oh, interesting.
I was like, I am sure it's going to be a water-based challenge. And I was kind of surprised it wasn't.
Well, you know what's funny, too, is I was thinking, I'm like, there have been other water challenges, so how did she get through them? But she may have sat out of it.
But see, I was thinking about that, too. But they were all in the shallows of, that we haven't been out in the deep ocean yet for any of the challenges.
That's true. At least not in a while. Yeah. Okay, interesting. I don't know. All right, so let's move on to this episode's immunity and reward challenge. So this is another kind of stamina strength-based challenge where essentially you have to hold this, like, crowbar of sorts that there's a ball contraption above you, and the whole thing is you have to hold your weight up to keep the ball in place. If the ball falls, you're out. Or if you step off the kind of perch you're standing on, you're also out. We see a lot of people drop like flies pretty quickly.
Instantly. I mean, understandable too, because how fast that ball moved. If you let any slack, it could be off there before you even realize it.
Well, and here's the thing. I think in games like this, it's about knowing your own strengths. Maybe we've talked about this season before. But it's like, okay, not to stereotype, but if I see someone like Joe and David and I see those muscles and I know like, okay, they're going to breeze through a competition like this, why waste my energy that I barely have anyway, now being out here starved, I'm hot, I'm really, you know, water maybe, that's it. Like, why would I waste my energy when like I know I'm unlikely to win, comparatively speaking to them? I mean, we saw how long they lasted on the challenge a few episodes ago where it was very similar style.
And I mean, it did in the end come down to Joe versus David again.
It was a showdown. But I will say, here's what I loved. I was fully convinced. I was like, okay, David's gonna win.
It seemed like that though.
Joe was really letting up, and I was like, I don't know. And then the Survivor gods rained down, and David dropped kind of out of nowhere, and so Joe ends up winning, which I'm so excited about.
I was happy about that because David has gotten on my nerves these last few episodes, and he's also gotten very cocky. Like in the last time him and Joe went head to head, he's like, I'm not running out of energy. You let it go, Joe. I'll help. And he did that again when he was like, I'll pick you for the reward.
And I will say, I've admired Joe since the beginning, but there are certain things about his game that kind of annoy me or bother me in a sense, but I will say I'm always going to be Team Joe over David, so I was still really elated that he won. Also because I was like, I think in this game, David is going to potentially be easier to get out than Joe because Joe is so well aligned and well trusted, whereas like David I think was kind of on an island if Joe's not in support of him.
Well, I mean, they had that like, I can't remember exactly what they're called, but basically like the really strong people alliance. In this episode, you really got to start to see the cracks form in there, and I'm glad because I was kind of getting a little irritated at that alliance. I'm like, okay, come on, Mitch, come on, Star, Camilla, you guys get these big guys out because they're being very.
I have not understood is I'm like. And I'm still kind of struggling with that even so, and I'm curious how that will play into these next few episodes. But it's like, these people that are quote unquote on the bottom, there is power in those numbers. Like there are still plenty of them where they could go after this other half of the group, but they're not. And I'm like, I just don't understand what we're doing.
And I feel like on the edits, we haven't got to see much of them since the merge. You know, I feel like we haven't got to see much from Mitch, from Star, Camilla. I mean, even Mary. Since the merge, I feel like their storylines have been very tight.
It's been a very Joe and Eva-centric last few episodes, which is fine, but it's like, I don't know. So anyway, with this immunity win, Joe also wins reward and picks Eva, Mitch, and Shaheen to join him on reward, which I will say just real quick, the reward was interesting because obviously at this point, like I said, Eva and Joe are always going to vote together. Shaheen is not really going to publicly say what he's thinking. So you see Mitch kind of voicing like, maybe we should go for David. And everyone else is like, nah, probably not. So I did think that was interesting that Mitch was pitching himself because then on the back end of it, then everyone else is like, you know, kind of in this pre-tribal council moment of the episode, everyone's basically like, well, let's just get out Mitch then. And they're throwing that name around.
I think Shaheen's definitely a player that plays in the shadows. For sure. Also, this reward made me think, we also forgot to mention in the beginning that Eva got an advantage from her immunity challenge win a few episodes
I forgot about
ago.
That.
So she basically sneaks off in the middle of the night. Not as sneakily as she thinks because Shaheen wakes up Joe. They don't say anything to the rest of the group though. But basically, Eva went down to the beach where the torches were, and she could either take an extra vote or gamble it 50-50 on that, or what was the one?
It was like, I don't know, there was all kinds of advantages.
Another advantage, I cannot think of what it is, and she ended up gambling it, got the advantage, and she could have gambled it again where she would have had a 33% chance of getting something or 66% of losing.
She was like,
but she was smart, honestly.
I was going to say smart girl, yes, absolutely.
And she ended up telling her group, not all of them, but Joe, Shaheen, and I think Camilla. Or maybe Mary.
I don't know. Someone was in the group, though. So anyway, fast forwarding back to pre-tribal council then. So what's interesting is it kind of goes from being heavy on Mitch to really, really pursuing this idea of what does a blindside to David look like,
Yeah.
right? And so the biggest kind of factor, I think, in this whole equation is that you have Joe and Eva, who are going to be a voting block. They are not going to vote
Right.
separately. They have, in this episode, they'll say like 42 times that they're not going to vote differently. And so what's interesting is, I will say, as the viewer, up to this point, I'm like frustrated with this whole episode because there was too much tribal council, or too much Camp Life in the beginning, and then it came down to Joe and David again in the reward challenge, or immunity challenge, sorry.
Yeah.
And then I was like, ugh. And then I was like, I just really feel like Mitch is gonna be the one that's gonna go home, and it's really gonna irk me because I'm just tired of this side of the tribe kind of ruling everything. So fast forward to tribal council, and it's so interesting because there's this dynamic conversation always, of course, but honestly, nothing that's really exposing any pertinent information that I feel like is gonna give away what happens.
Right.
So when all the votes are read, David gets the unanimous votes. Basically, maybe there was a few not gone his way, and he gets voted out. And then you see the votes after, and Joe and Eva did flip and voted him out, which I thought was interesting with Kyle, Shaheen, Camilla.
I mean, I'm not surprised. I feel like in these last couple episodes, his paranoia really started to set in. And I think he really, really, really wanted to be like a strong final 3, 4, going in with Joe and Eva. Where, like, even some of the other tribe mates have said he should have tried out for the Olympics with them instead of coming on Survivor, So
I did see something kind of funny. You guys, this is horrible. But it was announced after the episode when he was doing exit press that his girlfriend did dump him when they got home.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Like, he put it everywhere, so...
As much as I kind of didn't like him in the end, he deserves better if his girlfriend... fiance was only going to stand for the money.
Listen, I wasn't sure how I felt about him in the last few episodes either, but I don't think that situation was ever good for him. I think that's probably just a sign from the universe that he should move on.
If you're only with somebody because of the money, you don't truly love them.
No.
So, it was probably for the best, and he can find somebody better.
Yeah. I do want to make a note on the rest of the season here. So what's interesting is the preview for the next episode, we kind of see it seems like, anyway, you never know, the previews are always misleading, but it seems like it's going to be this kind of clash of the two sides. So you're going to have Joe, Eva, Shaheen, Kyle, and then Camilla, Mitch, Star, and Mary is seemingly how that split works. And I am just so interested to see if these kind of quote-unquote underdogs can overcome and continue to take the big dogs out. Because I will say one thing, especially now that David is out, that's really interesting to me is I do think this season is going to end up becoming like the clash of the personalities and who thinks they're the big dog. Because you look at these castmates this season, and you've got, I would argue, Joe, Eva, Kyle, Shaheen, and we'll even throw, I don't know, Mitch in there sometimes. It feels like all these people think that they're the ones kind of leading the way, but I'm like, the thing is, I don't think any of you actually have a great pull on the game right now to the point where you would pull people over someone else,
I don't even know if I'd say Mitch is in that category.
No, honestly, but I'm just like, I think sometimes he thinks he has the pull, which is why he was like willing to throw David's name out. But also, I think Mitch is playing the game of like, I have nothing to lose, so why not just try?
I think he knows he's pretty much the bottom. He doesn't have a strong alliance. If they were smart, even like Kyle and Shaheen, they need to break up Eva and Joe.
Yeah.
Those two, I mean, granted, that puts one of them on the jury, which if the other one gets to the final 3, they're probably going to vote for the other person. But they're just such a strong team, and they're never going to go against each other that they just need to break it up.
Yeah. Here's me. If we're breaking up this duo, okay, and it kind of breaks my heart to say this, I would almost get out Eva because Eva, I think, is a lot less swayable.
Yes.
Because, and I think she's just very hard to persuade because she's been very firm on her thoughts. And when she kind of like cancel someone out in her mind, I feel like it's just like a done deal. Whereas Joe, if Eva's out, who's been his right-hand woman this whole season, I think Joe knows how to play this game very well. I think he will latch onto somebody else in order to make it to the end. So I'm like, if I'm one of these other kind of quote-unquote people who are trying to be the big dog, I would probably get out Eva, break up that duo, and then pull Joe in, because I think that would be the smartest move.
I would agree with that, because I think Joe's more play with his heart.
Yeah.
And, if you're honest with him, he's going to stick with you, whereas Eva, is very straightforward. Once you imprint something on her, she's going to run with that, So...
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see how it all plays out. Brand new episode of Survivor Wednesday on CBS. Don't miss it.